Okay, Pinstripe, I said, leaning my head into one of my hands and looking over at him. You want safe haven? Well, in exchange, I would like you to follow a few basic protocols. While you're here, of course. As part of the deal for you staying. Rule number one, no cursing anyone here. The last thing we need is any sort of magical frog-related nonsense. And rule number two, you must contribute. In exchange for being given safe haven here, you need to play a part. Be a productive member of the group, in other words. So, no sitting in the back of the group and making nonsensical comments while we do all the work. You have to be willing to contribute in conversations, discussions, reasonable deduction in terms of solving our problems. Oh, Reginald, I don't think that would be fair, the man in the pinstripe suit replied. With the vast amounts of knowledge and information I have access to, doling it out, all carefree and without cost to you, that would be an expensive proposition. My experience does not come cheap, young man, he said, kneeling down and placing his chin on top of his hands, resting comfortably in his cane. On his cane. Don't misunderstand, Pinstripe, I replied. I'm not asking you to divulge any deep dark secrets, nor give me access to any secretive information. Think of it as a game. You like games, right, Pinstripe? The objective of this one is simple. Basically, you have to participate in the discussion and be productive using only the information that we as a group have already gathered, and excluding all of your secretive knowledge from the equation. Simply act as if it doesn't exist. Surely a master such as yourself could achieve that, I asked. Interesting proposition, Reginald. It sounds fun. Very well. I'll give this little game of yours a play. Shall we call it a deal? And like that, me and Pinstripe shook hands in agreement. Now, everything is going according to my plan thus far. Now, I have to find some way to get Pinstripe to give me some sort of insight on how to resolve this issue. For the next 30 minutes or so, I spent my time filling Pinstripe in on the details, the amount of information that we gathered, my overarching agenda, the dangers we suffered, and all the nitty-gritty things. Pinstripe listened intently, paying close attention to everything that I said. I could tell that he was running it through his head, even if he was acting nonchalant. He had a focused expression on his face, even while he was summoning up a pot of tea for us to drink, and pouring himself a refreshing glass. Quite interesting, Pinstripe said, looking over the boards, while rubbing at his chin with one hand, while the other rested on his cane, one leg crossed over the other, looking rather relaxed. So, it appears you have a problem with multiple layers. First and foremost, you need to ensure your own safety as well as Miss Alice and Eliza here. As spellcasters without heritage, you have little access and no hope of gaining entry into the Emerald Alliance. And quite frankly, entry into the other side of things is just an unacceptable set of terms. I wouldn't expect anyone in their right mind to agree to it, unless they were absolutely desperate. So it's out of the question. And yet you somehow need to gain access to the protective measures and rules that these two sides abide by. On top of that, there's this interesting situation with Alice, and the suitors coming for her from the Emerald Alliance. Yeah, it's quite an inconvenience, Alice said. To think I'd ever marry one of those gross jerks. Ugh. Alice said, shivering a bit in disgust. The idea of it makes my skin crawl. Oh, but that does give me an idea. A spell that makes someone's skin crawl off. That might be interesting, Alice said, placing a finger to her chin as if she was thinking over it, if she knew how to accomplish the feat, which quite frankly sounded right up Alice's alley. Okay, Mr. Smarty Pants famous guy, if you're so smart, then what do we do about it? Eliza said, throwing a serious expression towards the man in the pinstripe suit. Pinstripe just continued to rub his chin, looking over the boards and all of the information. Well, you're in quite the predicament, young Regiman. There doesn't seem to be very many options, at least not favorable ones. And I assume you've already tried checking the paperwork, looking for some gap in the rules that would allow you to get what you need from the situation. It's highly possible that the answer is there, he said, gently taking a sip of his tea. But there are simply so many different rules and restrictions, loopholes and technicalities, all laying over each other in different ways. It's a complex maze of legal nonsense. I never liked it myself. Business is always so much simpler. Profit for profit. But bureaucracy, ugh, don't get me started. A bunch of nonsense rules to keep old men safe and comfy in their seats of power. Ugh, I'd do away with it all if it were up to me. In fact, I could do away with it all. It would simply be too inconvenient to do so. I would have to expend far too many resources on it. If they weren't going to check, I might say simply lie to them. For example, you're required to have 6 magical generations in order to enter the Emerald Alliance. However, there's no rule that says they all have to be sequential, or come from one side of the family. So, for example, if you agreed to marry Alice, and included your father as a magical generation, then you two combined would have the prerequisites necessary to enter the Emerald Alliance, technicality or not. But it's highly unlikely that they would allow you to enter without a great deal of skepticism. They would most likely double-check everything, and looking in depth, it wouldn't be hard to find out you were lying about your father's interest in magic. Pinstripe got up from his seat and began to pace around, looking back and forward at all the different boards filled with information. Gain leverage on a member, perhaps. No, not enough time. Or access, he said, mumbling, walking back and forth across the multiple boards. Blackmail, perhaps. No, you have to do research. Start targeting key members, gathering information. There's not enough time for that either. And with only the 3 of you, you don't have enough power to force them to accept you. Dealing with a single member is one thing, but trying to fight the organization is an entirely different matter. Too many powerful wizarding and magic families, sorcerers, enchanters, necromancers, an entire assortment of magical casters to deal with, of every shape and variety. No, fighting them simply isn't an option. And suddenly, Pinstripe's pace slowed to a halt. Or is it? One doesn't truly have to fight them all. Truly a wise man would pick his battles. Fight the right fights in order to gain what you need. It's a dangerous game. If unsuccessful, it would lead to demise. But it could work, he said, rubbing his chin, starting to get a sly grin, half cocked, and began to look over in our direction. Yes, you have the prerequisite numbers. 3 should be enough. Technically, they haven't set any rules or bounds that restrict that, quite simply because most wouldn't be stupid enough to try. But that might work to our advantage. I believe they will underestimate my little colleagues here. It might work perfectly, he said, his smile growing more wicked by the moment. Okay, my dear Reginald, I think I may have found a solution to your little problem. That is, if you're willing to put your life on the line for it.